We need to understand the role of colonialism in creating a stratified global world. Colonialism stresses that those countries that industrialized got a first jump on the rest of the world. Where did industrialization start? Great Britain was the first to harness the energy of the steam engine. The profit and surplus was invested in fleets of ships, mostly for the movement of goods and commerce, but also for military, in order to protect the shipping fleets and to aid in colonizing other regions of the world. The more powerful colonizing nations, England, Spain, and France, moved their holdings out in the world. The focus was to create economic colonies in order to exploit another region's labor and natural resources for the benefit of the mother country. In the old model of colonization, the mother country planted the flag for their government. However, a newer model of colonization has emerged, one where a corporate flag is planted. Now corporations move abroad and become powerful forces in the local economy, which in turn gives them a great deal of power in that country. A different model, called world system theory, finds that 4 groups of nations exist. The core nations are those that industrialized first: Britain, France, Holland, and Germany, and that they grew rich and powerful. The second group is the semi-periphery, which are located mostly in the Mediterranean, and finds that their economies stagnated because they grew dependent on trade with the core nations. The economies of the third group, the periphery or the fringe nations, developed even less. These are the Eastern European countries which sold cash crops to the core nations. The fourth group of nations includes most of Africa and Asia. Called the external area, these nations were left out of the development of capitalism altogether, but some areas are now moving into the peripheral group. Another explanation of global stratification is a theory called the culture of poverty. This proposes that cultures in the least industrialized nations hold them back because the poverty is passed from one generation to the next through the beliefs and value systems that are part of the culture. Because life is so difficult and education is not available, the members of those cultures stick with the tried and true ways of doing things, how tradition has always dictated how things should be done. Also, the culture of poverty theory suggests that religion leads them to a fatalistic view of the world, and that there is nothing that they can do but submit to the situation. There's a good deal of criticism of this theory, as it doesn't take into account access to resources and the opportunities that this would create for those populations. All theories have at least some value. However, none of them by themselves is an adequate explanation of global poverty. Taken together and synthesized, these theories have far more value than they do individually to help us understand global stratification. Colonialism is no longer a model of development, but it's been replaced with what Michael Harrington labeled as neocolonialism. Since World War II, the idea of conquering other nations has changed, and it's no longer something most governments engage in. However, instead, control is exercised through economic markets. For instance, goods are sold on credit to less industrialized countries, particularly weapons, so that the local elites can stay in power. By doing this, the less industrialized nations are kept in a web of debt and are at the mercy of their creditors. To illustrate your point, your author tells the story of how Saudi Arabia was founded by Great Britain and how it was ensnared in debt. Multinational corporations operate across national boundaries and together work with their home country governments to maintain power bases in the foreign countries. Occasional invasions by the military, sometimes called peacekeeping missions, help to maintain the foreign country's leaders in power so that the multinational company can continue to do business there. The multinational corporations do what they have to do in order to maintain political stability so they can continue to do business, even if it means buying that stability through paying off the key players in the government or buying weapons. At the same time, just doing business in a foreign country can continue, if not amplify, the inequalities and internal stratification within a foreign country. Some of the lesser industrialized nations, such as India, or industrializing countries like China, are leveraging their cheap labor to improve gross domestic product, to increase profits, so they can buy technologies to catch up to the more industrialized nations. They are focusing on increasing their gross domestic product in order to try to catch up and possibly surpass the more industrialized nations someday. Technologies are critical in order to improve a nation's ability to be productive and competitive in world markets. And in order to access technology, you've got to be able to buy it. Thus, increasing gross domestic product is essential for many nations in order to improve their standing. It's never easy for those in power to remain in power. Unanticipated events force the elites to respond, and without appropriate action, those in power are challenged and removed. The political changes in China and Russia the past several decades have had far-reaching effects on the economic order on a worldwide basis. Global powers respond with infusing trillions of dollars into their economic political systems. And realignment will continue to occur, and because the world economy and social order is so deeply connected, it will have consequences for all on this planet. So that ends our chapter on global stratification. I've discussed some of the main theories, and we've considered important concepts, such as colonialism and neocolonialism. And we've looked at some of the different levels of development of other nations and regions.